All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Joining me now, two very distinguished gentlemen. Both are former U.S. congressmen, and one is my current Newsmax colleague, J.D. Hayworth, former congressman from the great state of Arizona, and, of course, host of Newsmax Prime. You see it every night at 8 p.m. Eastern, right after my show at 7 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, America Talks Live at 1 p.m. Eastern as well. Tom Tancredo, former congressman from Colorado, 2008 candidate for president of the United States, and Breitbart columnist. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you. Let me run this by you, J.D. There are reports out there that in Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia, the Latino vote is spiking big time. For instance, in Florida, an 89% increase from 2008. North Carolina, a 79% increase from 2012. And just about the same kind of numbers in Georgia. If that's true and accurate, what does that mean we're going to see tonight?
Well, I would caution those on the left and those in the media who always concentrate on what I call the myth of the monolith concerning the Hispanic vote, the Latino vote, to just hang on a second. The fact is, we know that there are many different people of Hispanic heritage, not all of them from Puerto Rico, not all of them from Mexico, and you have different points of view. For example, I think back to the presidential primary where, by rights, you had two open border amnesty Floridians running, and yet when we did a live show out of Little Havana, the choice there on the part of many activists was Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump carried Florida. So I think you get a lot of different points of view. I think, as Tom will attest, certainly when we both ran for office in the West, we had outspoken anti-amnesty voters who happen to be Hispanic. So beware the myth of the monolith and the assumption that the alphabet networks, their cable cousins, and the rest of the Democrat cheerleaders in the media will make, saying, oh, it's all over, there's a spike in Hispanic voting, and that means curtains for Trump.
Right.
Not so fast.
And Congressman Tancredo, there's a poll out today or yesterday, granted for the Center for Immigration Studies, which would favor these results, but nonetheless, it was done by Pulse Opinion Research that shows that 51% of Hispanics polled back deportation for illegals and want immigration, the immigration cap cut in half.
Exactly. And JD is absolutely right. Look, I'm a personal example of it. I don't think, and I don't want to sound too pompous about this, but I don't think there's been any more outspoken person in the state of Colorado in terms of illegal immigration than I have been for the last 20 years. So well known, my position is well known throughout this state, maybe even throughout the nation. Well, in the 2010 governor's election, in which I ran as a Constitution Party candidate, garnered 37% of the vote. The Republican candidate garnered 11% of the vote, but we lost by 1% to the Democrat incumbent. But in that election, I had 41% Hispanic support, and Hickenlooper, the Democrat, had 40%. That's here, Colorado, Tom Tancredo. So JD is absolutely right. There is nothing monolithic about their vote. Yes, it's a majority usually goes for Democrats, but certainly not near the proportion that Black Americans vote Democrat. So I don't think you can draw any major conclusions from the fact that you had this spike in Hispanic voting in those states. All right,
JD, of course, 7 o'clock, the polls close where you are sitting down in Florida. Very key state. If Hillary were to win Florida, then it would just about be over for Donald Trump. What do you see happening in Florida? And what do you see happening nationally tonight? How long a night will it be for all of us?
Well, I think it could be a kind of long evening. And I will tell you, just both from personal experience and taking a look at the electoral map, there are three states I'm concentrating on tonight. One is the aforementioned Florida, where I'm now a registered voter, 29 electoral votes. The second is the state where I was born and where I first became a voter, North Carolina, and then back out west, Arizona, the state I was honored to represent for 12 years in the Congress of the United States. I think those states are very important, but again, let me caution everybody. There is no need to accept the narrative of the left. Look, as we know, mathematics is both associative and commutative. You can move the numbers around. If he's unsuccessful in Florida, which, by the way, I don't think is going to happen. I think Trump will win Florida. I think he wins North Carolina and Arizona. And I think where he is with the momentum, unless there has been some hijinks, and we need to report in Broward County, Florida, there was an affidavit filled out. There are problems down there with the Election Commission and voting by mail. But I will tell you, if the hijinks can be stopped, I think Trump has the momentum, and I think he can pull this thing off tonight.
Congressman Tancredo, let me ask you. Of course, you're in Colorado, a state that has been much talked about as well, which way it'll go. But what do you see happening tonight? Long night, short night, and what states are you looking at?
Oh, yeah, certainly a long night. And I think that I would look at Maine and New Hampshire, excuse me, the early returns from Maine and New Hampshire. And I think if Trump if he overperforms in those two states, it will really bode well for the rest of the evening for Trump. So that's the ones I have my eye on right now. Colorado, we came from about 10 days ago. Hillary was ahead by at least 7 or 8 points. Today, everybody is reporting it's too close to call. The Republican ballot today, the most recent, because we've had early voting for weeks and weeks and weeks. And 68% of the total registered voters in Colorado have already voted. There is about a 1% advantage for Republicans right now. I have to tell you, it needs to be more than that in order to deal with the Republican defections. And so there are 29% of the independents have voted. I don't know how they're going to break, but it will make the difference. This I do know. This I can absolutely assure you of, that no matter what happens tonight, this battle that has been enjoined will not end. Donald Trump did not create the movement. It created Donald Trump. The movement itself is what will go on. And now it has a leader. That's one thing it never has. And it's not necessarily
on that note, Tom, let's tell people, let's remind people what happened. And you and I have talked about it some before, but in the wake of 2004, you and I, and that was the Bush reelect, you and I sat down with Ken Mellman, who had been the George W. Bush campaign manager, and then was becoming the chairman of the Republican National Committee, and we told him in no uncertain terms over dinner, do not bring up amnesty described as comprehensive immigration reform. We will fight it, and the people will defeat it. And of course, what they thought they could do is strong-arm us, and they could not, and that has been, well, you can take a look at one of the reasons Marco Rubio is on the ballot today for the U.S. Senate in Florida. Instead of the nominee for president, he deserted those who supported him in 2010, saying he was going to stay tough on this, and he turned around and became part of the Gang of Eight with the senators from Arizona, John McCain and Jeff Flake, and of course the ever-confused Lindsey Graham. And so there are still fault lines, but you're right. Donald Trump stepped up. He had the name recognition. He obviously had the ability to self-finance, and he was able to move to the fore with something that you and I toiled in the vineyards on those many years ago.
All right, guys.
Absolutely true.
We have about a minute and a half left. Let me ask you, Tom, about the down ballot. What do you think is going to happen in the Senate?
That is going to be a really tough hold for the Republicans, I think. The most recent polling I've seen anyway, to the extent you can rely on any kind of polling anymore, because it's all over the board, of course, but it will be tough. I think the Senate stays in Republican hands. I don't think it will be as strong as it is today. There won't be as many Republicans there, but I think it will stay in Republican hands, and certainly the House will.
What about it, J.D.?
Thornton Wilder wrote it, "The skin of our teeth." that will be the margin of the Republican majority in the U.S. Senate. The House does stay in Republican hands.
All right, gentlemen, I couldn't think of two people I'd rather hear from on a day like today at this point in time. And JD, I know we'll be hearing plenty more from you throughout the evening and afternoon, and I look forward to joining you later in the evening as well. Thank you both very much.
Pleasure.
All right, Tom Tancredo and J.D. Hayworth, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so the question is, if Trump wins, what does that mean for the GOP establishment? That's an interesting aspect of this whole conversation that we haven't addressed yet in this show, but we will, because you know who's coming up next? Newsmax White House correspondent John Gizzi, live from Washington, D.C., is next.